Good morning, everyone. The weather is very nice today, and thank you for tuning out. My name is Sarthak Mandal, and I am a final year student of Sports Business Management in Sheffield. And why is this research important to me? Because I am an Asian, and 1 out of every 5 people in the world is from my country, which is India. So, obviously, in my second year research, I decided that let's do competitive balance on Asian football leagues. So, over the course of this presentation, we will discuss the context and rationale of the competitive balance, how it was developed, the previous studies in the analysis of competitive balance, and the methods, results, and discussions what we have used, and some conclusions about why we should really take Asia seriously. The next slide, yeah. So competitive balance. Competitive balance came around in the year 1956 when Michael Rottenberg was a professor of economics in America. He figured out the free trade of baseball players, and he produced an hypothesis that the uncertainty of outcome, like the more uncertain the outcome is, there is a chance that more fans will come and watch the game, and the probability that more people will watch the game on television. In the early years, it was essentially the North American market, such as Rottenberg, Neil, and all, but towards 1970s, essentially it spilled over to Europe across the pond, and some of the European researchers also did some of the research, but despite this, most of the research is limited to the Western football industry, and there have been only 2 research on competitive balance in Asian football industry, and that is one of the main reasons there is a research gap, and that's why I thought that we should really do this research. The next one is regarding the rationale. As you have seen, like the Chinese Super League has expanded massively in recent years. Since 2012, they have signed a load of players from Europe, such as Ramirez. The Tyson played in China as well, and before that, the Qatar Stars League, they had this marquee player system where every team was given a budget of 10 million to sign any player from anywhere in the earth they wanted. But essentially it was stalled due to super tax introduced by the Chinese Super League in 2016, where like if you wanted to get a player for 60 million, you essentially had to pay 120 million, so it stopped. But as we say, the dominance of European football by the Asian market can be only challenged through investment, and if Asian investors are willing to come on board and invest in the Asian football market. And the big 5 leagues in Asia, which are China, UAE, Qatar, Korea, and Iran. So why we selected this as the big 5, Iran and Korea, these are traditionally the 2 strongest national teams and leagues in Asia. The South Korea team has played in every World Cup ever since 1986. Iran is the highest ranked team in Asia. Among Qatar and UAE, you can see their dominance in ownership, state-owned ownership in European football in the form of PSG and Manchester City, and City Football Group has today expanded in the form of its 8th team and bought 65% stake in Mumbai City FC as we speak, which is in India, and Chinese companies are investing a lot in European football as well. So we thought this would be good start for the big 5, and apart from that, at the time of writing, these were the big 5 leagues in India, the big 5 leagues in Asia as well. So the theoretical framework. So what is cooptation? So it is like simultaneous competition and cooperation on and off the field. So essentially, when businesses operate, they try to drive out the competition from the industry and gain a power of monopoly, but in the field of sports, you need competition to survive, and while like sports teams are competitors on the field, they are essentially economic partners on the field, off the field. And Bradenberger and Nailbuff, they have written a book on cooptation as well, which came out in 1996, and more industries are slowly adopting this framework. In terms of, you can say, competitive balance, there are 2 major strands. The first one is the analysis of competitive balance, which is the scope of this paper, and the second one is the uncertainty of outcome hypothesis, which was developed by Rottenberg, that the more uncertain the result is, there is a more chance that people come and watch the game. But in terms of the analysis of competitive balance, the two major strands within them are the measures of concentration and measures of dominance, which we'll discuss more. In terms of past ACB analysis of competitive balance studies, most of them are done in North American sports, and one author, Bozashi, in 2003 compared the North American closed leagues with the European open leagues, and he found out that open leagues are less balanced than closed leagues in general. But some of the authors, like you can say, found contradictory findings in terms of in European leagues, competitive balance decreased in some of the leagues and competitive balance increased in some of the leagues. And the most notable of them was the English Premier League. I guess everyone remembers last year the title race went down till the last game, but it was one of the worst competitively balanced league because the third team was 21 points behind, and it was the competitive balance essentially calculates the market share or the points share of every team. In terms of football league development in Asia, so by 1940s, we essentially in Asia had the national federation, and in terms of professional sports leagues, it usually started in 1960s, but on average, it took 55 years, you can say, until 1995 for every league in Asia to be professional, and some of them still today don't behave professionally, it is still in a mature phase. Why is this happening? You can say the political environment, the disruption, the wars going on in Western Asia, and obviously match fixing allegations. And apart from that, Asian football is very different from European football when it comes down to the team composition, how it is run. So just example, in Asia we have salary caps. We have a cap on the total number of players that can actually be recruited and a total number of foreigners that can play in the particular leagues. For example, in India we have, in a team of 11 you can have only 4 foreigners. Out of them, one needs to be from another Asian country because of the AFC Confederation rule, and out of the 7 Indians, one has to be an under 19 player and has to play 90 minutes. So, and then also in terms of, just like the Premier League is run by a separate body, which is a private body, but the Asian Football League is generally run by the federation. So in India, AIFF runs the I-League and the ISL. In Iran, the Iran Pro League is run by the Iranian Football Federation. In terms of the league sizes, we essentially calculated it from 1996, 1997 to 2017-18. The 1996-97 rationale is because 1940 plus 55, 1995. So we started after a year after that, and you can say like in China, before the Chinese Super League was present, there was the present day second division, which is the A League, was the top division, and similar in Iran. Iran Pro League came in 2001, and the number of teams varied over time. Some of the UAE Pro League essentially had 4 teams in 2004, and this present date has 14 teams. Some of the leagues had like 18 teams, dropped down to 14, again moved up to 18, had 16. And it goes on all the time in Asia, it is common, some teams drop out every year. One insight is, in India, over the last 22 years, 45 top division clubs have shut down their operations, which is a massive number. And in terms of methods, we used the time period for all the 5 leagues were established using a round robin structure. Some of the leagues, such as the Korean Super League, they had the penalty system like the MLS, where if it ends in a draw, you have the penalty, but we removed that system. We went for it, if it is a draw, it ends in a draw, we removed that system. And we measured competitive balance using the Herfindahl Index of Competitive Balance, which is adaptation of Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, which is essentially used by North American stock markets to calculate market share. And HICP can be calculated by HICP, which is HHI divided by 1 by the number of teams into 100, and HHI is basically the sum of the squares of the market shares of all the teams in the league. So for example, in the 2017-18 Chinese Super League, it has 16 teams. The HICP score calculated using the formula was 109.42, and we introduced a new measure called the standard HICP, which is basically a standardized version of HICP, because in HICP for an example, 100 is good, anything more than 100 is essentially like bad. So if the number of team increases, the HICB declines. So for 2 teams, the maximum HICB will be 200. For 3 teams, it comes down to 155. For 4 teams, 140, and so on. So a standard HICB allows us to compare a bit more, like in terms of how we can see the scores. And the maximum value standard HICB can adopt is 100. So it is the reverse of HICB. So if SHICB takes a value of 100, the league is uncompetitive. Anything less than that, it becomes more competitive. So SHICB for the same 2017-18 Chinese Super League was calculated by using this formula, which is like the max HICB is 137.78. So HICB is 109.42 divided by 137.78 multiplied by 100 is 79.42. In the next, we calculated Pearson's correlation coefficient to examine the pattern of overall leagues over time. One-way ANOVA tests and post-hoc tests such as the Shapiro-Wilk test was established, and the level of dominance are examined by 2 different formulas. We calculated in one graph the number of different teams to win the title divided by the maximum number of titles won by a single team, and the other one was the number of different teams to finish top 3 positions in the league by maximum number of top 3 finishes achieved by a single team. In Europe it was usually like top 4, but in Asia we adopted the top 3 because usually 3 teams qualify for the AFC Champions League, which is the equivalent of UEFA Champions League in Asia. And as you can see, here are the results. You can see Iran is like on average the most competitively balanced league, followed by South Korea, China, and Qatar and UAE are almost the same, but Qatar is more balanced than UAE. And the second one is the ANOVA test, and we found significant relations in all of them barring one. There were significant relations between Qatar Super League and the Iranian League for both HICB and SHICB scores, which established that like the SHICB, which was an original measure introduced for this research, is also acceptable and displays the same level of consistency as HICB. In the top 3 title dominance, we can say, like this is a diagonal curve, the more you go towards the up, it is the least competitive, and the more you come down, it is the most competitive. So UAE is technically the least competitive league, and there was a team called Al Ain in UAE, which has won the league 9 times in those 22 seasons. Is similar to the top 3 dominance. You can see again UAE sort of is the least competitive league, but there can be other comparisons such as Korea, Iran, but it is again all a subjective view of how you say it. But we can see that China is technically the most competitive league. In terms of discussion, we have found that the HICB scores have usually varied over time, and there is no significant trend. Some of the leagues have displayed a decline, some of the leagues have displayed a dominance, and it is in line with other, you can say, other leagues in Europe which have displayed a similar result, and we have like written down our findings. And the future of Asian football, I mean, like you can say, the positive growth was seen over the last 20 years, but can it compete with the European industry? Depends on the number investment, and there are partnerships between some of the European clubs and the Asian companies such as Chelsea and Yokohama Tires, Barcelona and Vissel Kobe. I guess a new company called Hire is trying to get the sponsorship deal of Manchester United as well. And the main driver of competitive balance in the European and Asian clubs is perceived to be the star talent. And if European and Asian clubs and companies can combine, they can benefit it more way. The existence, like how much European industries are preferring Asia right now. Premier League has adopted a new strategy for India. They have a new social media account focusing only on India and congratulating Indian stars. And for future research, we have to consider like the emerging football markets of Africa and America. And you can say there's problems in India regarding I-League and the ISL, the only country to probably have 2 top division leagues. And although all the discussions concerning sporting competition and integrity is still at the heart of every sporting league, and competitive balance remains at the core of economic analysis and professional team sports leagues. Thank you.
Thanks, Arthak. Really well done.